Hi, I'm Patric Palm, CEO and founder of Favro, and this is the Learn from Leaders podcast. The background to this show is that Favro customers are some of the most innovative companies in the world. Enterprises wanting to be more agile, software as a service companies scaling fast, and game developers and publishers wanting to master live ops. So we get to know some truly inspiring leaders in product development, marketing, operations, sales, executive management. And what we do here is that we interview them about leadership so we can all learn from them. Let's go.
And we are live with Ola from Soundtrack Your Brand. But that's not the first company you've been involved in building. So I think for the people that haven't met you before, we need to start with a bit of a backstory. Can you just share, the story that's been leading you up to where you are today?
Right, of course. Where do I start? I'll keep it short and dry. I've been trying to survive and make a living in the music tech industry for almost 15 years now. So I'm somewhat of a senior citizen in the music tech scene, I would say. This is my soundtrack that I'm currently managing and running and I founded together with Spotify as my co-founder. Is my fifth startup within the music space, actually. So previously I have been on the consumer DSP side, where I was one of the co-founders of Beats Music in the US, the main competitor to Spotify, I would say, and then that got acquired by Apple. And my team was transferred into Apple and becoming Apple Music. And then previously I've been doing hardware, upload and share platforms within music and so forth. So been really focused on one industry. I think that's kind of my story. I was doing other companies in other kind of worlds before that, but music tech was really kind of when I took the step into working with my passion.
I have a question for you on that. So some of the customers we have with Favro, but also with my previous company, are making kind of like music games, Rock Band and things like that. And they had like a hiring strategy that they even though they were making a computer game, they wanted to hire people that had some kind of connection to music or a big music interest. Have you had similar thoughts?
I'm working with I have the luxury and the privilege and some luck to be working with my passion, obviously. And a lot of people are very passionate about music. So finding people who actually are extremely interested as consumers or, hobby musicians isn't that hard, actually. They tend to kind of draw themselves towards music-related companies with the same kind of logic that I came in working with your passion, right? Being able to pay the bills whilst working in an industry that you love and constantly kind of engage with the creative side of music and consume music in different types of versions. So yes, a lot of the people working at Soundtrack now with me and that have worked for me previously in music startups also have a deep passion for music as private individuals.
And, before we move on, just, clarification questions. So, you refer to the company now as Soundtrack. And when I introduced you, I was saying, Soundtrack Your Brand. I think there's a bit of a history there of the naming and a bit of a Spotify connection at the beginning. Maybe you can just explain a little bit on that for the ones who doesn't, are one of your customers or know you.
Right. So Soundtrack, first of all, is, as I refer to it today, is nothing more complicated than the world's first music streaming service for businesses. So when you walk into a cafe in New York or a Joe and the Juice in Copenhagen or a cool restaurant in LA, there's always music playing in the background. And that is in the music industry referred to as background music. Doesn't sound that sexy, but it's actually really cool because music is a super important ingredient in customer experiences out there in the physical world. So I was working in the consumer space, solving the problem for music in our headphones, right, for consumers. I realized that there was a whole world outside in all the restaurants and cafes and retail around the world, the physical world, where music was being played, and it was a completely different challenge. So I chose to kind of pivot from the B2C side to the B2B side. And when I did so, I moved back from the US to Stockholm, Sweden, where I'm raised and born, and I founded the company together with Spotify. And the first product and kind of the first iteration of the company was Spotify Business. So Spotify Business was the first product that we rolled out in Norway, Finland, and Sweden. So a lot of people kind of relate to it and remember it as Spotify Business. And then we also rolled out a product called Spotify Enterprise. But those two products were merely kind of a sophisticated commercial proof of concept to see if there was a market there to sell music streaming into the B2B markets. Lo and behold, all the cafes and restaurants and retailers wanted to buy music streaming and want to kind of use the technology of streaming to enhance their customer experience. So I decided to pivot from the Spotify brand and really move into becoming a completely independent company. So we rolled out, and the company's name was called Soundtrack Your Brand, the incorporated company. And but the idea was always to call the product Soundtrack. So the reality is that we now basically have moved towards Soundtrack and the product brand as the core identifier of who we are and what we do, because our company is basically our product and we are the product.
And, I really like your brand name Soundtrack, because, sometimes, you really feel like, you need a soundtrack to your life, you have it in your headphones, but it's the same thing, it's exactly what you say, if you are in a restaurant and that restaurant wants to have a certain vibe, the soundtrack to the experience is going to be a huge part of, the emotional impact on you as a customer, right? So there's, this is one of those times when, when the brand really resonates with experience, it will give, in this case, the end customer, because obviously your customer is the business, but there's an end customer, who will have a better experience, because of what you do.
Yeah, I usually say the classical, we help our business customers do better business with their customers. So the fact is that I realized that now with some data back up, I'm building the company for a while, 96% of customer interfacing businesses actually play music today. I mean, just try it out, walk in anywhere, but you realize when the music is really bad. That's when you kind of, notice it. Or when it's extremely good and kind of really jacked on and the DJ is kind of pumping. But all of the hours and kind of use cases in between, it's only there to kind of make you feel the brand and experience whatever type of experience, if you're in a Thai restaurant or if you're in an Italian restaurant, just to enforce and strengthen the experience. It shouldn't take over. It should augment and support and improve. So it's a very different kind of musical experience than the consumer services, but it's super interesting. I mean, research that we've done, also academics have done, have just proven the fact that with the right music at the right place at the right time, a business can sell more coffee, beer, clothes, whatever they're selling. And we're just tapping into that market and digitizing it with streaming.
There's quite a few companies coming out of Sweden that are in music tech. And I think we could have a whole podcast, around, like why that happened. But I'm actually gonna not get into that topic, and because I know that there's probably several people that are listening that are interested in, kind of like, what does it take, to make a successful business in music tech. And since you're a serial entrepreneur, you built several businesses already. I think today's conversation around some of like the key takeaways, what you learned, because one of the nice things on this podcast, when I talk to someone who's built more than one business, is that there's typically a couple of takeaways, right? And every time you go and you build the next business, there's going to be learnings that you put into action. And I think both for the ones that are more on, let's say, the junior side listening now, but also the ones who are more on the senior side, I think are super curious about your takeaways. I mean, what you learned from building more than one successful business in music tech.
Sure. I mean, it's you prepped me on this one a little bit, so I did kind of take the luxury of kind of putting down a couple of learnings from these years, and by no means have I been successful in everything I've done. On the contrary, I think I more remember it being just painful failures. But somewhere I'm still here and I'm paying the rent, so I'm doing something right. But there's a couple of interesting things with music tech, and not just that it's extremely stimulating to be able to work in the intersection of technology, music, and audio. Of course, that's, for me, it's a dream come true. But when I started almost 15 years ago, if you kind of look at this market, there was this very clear early stage but clear signal that the market was going to change forever. There was music production was going digital. Music consumption on the consumer side was going digital, and music distribution was going digital, all at the same time. So there was this perfect initial stage towards a complete disruption of a marketplace, and a marketplace where my thesis was all the music in the world would be made available at the fingertips for anyone, anytime, anywhere. And here we are, 13, 14 years later, that's pretty much what we have, right? Around 100 million tracks in your pocket, wherever you are in the world. So I think moving into that market, my thesis was there's going to be lots of room for interesting companies to be built in this space, and I was right. And then I think the core focus I had was to try to understand, so if you have 100 million tracks available in your pocket, how do you filter among all that wonderful music? How do you deliver the right music to the right person at the right time? Because that's obviously what a DJ, kind of the utopia of a DJ in your pocket, specifically for you all the time. So that was really the interesting kind of problem to solve, was to curate, select, if you may, and deliver the most relevant experience. And, you only have one life. Imagine trying to get all the amazing tracks during that lifetime. So the soundtrack of your life was kind of the initial thesis. And then 3 startups later, I kind of took the same learnings that I did on the consumer side, which was trying to filter all the music with a combination of machine learning, humans, and great product experience, and then understanding the context where it was to be performed, and do that for businesses and brands. Every brand has its soundtrack. Every brand has, its own kind of, it's a snowflake. It has its specific positioning and history and everything. So you could soundtrack that as well. And that's what we're doing. So the music industry provides an amazing opportunity because everyone loves music and music is played everywhere all the time. But it's also super complex. There's so much complexity in the sourcing of music and so forth. So the first kind of takeaway I have is, like always, it's so easy to think of an idea in music, but it's extremely hard to execute on it because the content sourcing is so damn complicated. So anyone who would want to kind of start building a company really needs to know what they're doing in terms of the licensing and legal requirements of sourcing IP-based product music. So that's kind of the first thing. When you look at a music startup, you can't just look at the product or the team or kind of look at the customers. You have to look at the relationship, the licensing organization, what they've been able to source, the feasibility of that, Universal Music would ever even do a deal with them. That's kind of one part of it. So that other industries don't really have, but the music industry has. So that's kind of the first one. Easy and fun to think up an idea, but extremely complicated to execute because of the prerequisite in the music industry. Then I would say the other one, which is kind of specific to my history, is I'm the guy who came from the consumer markets, building consumer products into the B2B market. So for me, B2B SaaS, this is like new for me in the context of my career. But what I did was, like, I always focus on the first thing is product market fit. That's kind of my religion. Yeah, when you're building a product, and it's so important in the consumer markets that you can really, like, there's no idea of trying to scale a business into the consumer markets without product market fit, because you can't sell something to consumer that they're not experiencing. So it's always about the value of the product. And so I'm trained that way. And now kind of B2B, 10 years later, are going in that direction as well. Things like product-led growth and that type of theory, where it's all about time to value and value first before sale. And so the second learning is not just specific for industry, but music in particular, where I come from, is that it's pretty similar how you do B2C and B2B. The thinking isn't actually as different as we thought it was before. And B2B companies have a lot to learn from B2C companies when it comes to establishing product market fit and building products, because some people talk about this as, the user-centric kind of era for B2B SaaS, right? Where it's all about actually looking how people use the product rather than what your pipeline looks like. That which you would kind of refer to, or you can relate to, right, Patric? So that's the second learning. Look to B2C players and learn from them, and maybe even recruit from B2C when you're building a B2B company, because they're really trained in product market fit as kind of the drive.
Yeah, I just have to do a quick comment on your second one here. I mean, I really like it, and as you said, I can totally relate to it in terms of that. The whole, first you need to have value before you have a pipeline, and back in the old days with many B2B products, it was very much driven by sales organizations, selling top down, having their pitch deck. It's a very, very different world today, I think. And I think you're absolutely right. For example, in our case, what we try to do is many of the people we recruit are from the game development industry, not only because we have many customers that are game developers, but also because they are so trained in exactly what you were saying. Because you can't make a game without totally nailing, all these points that you were making. So, they already are in that mindset of that. The end experience has to be amazing, otherwise we're not even in the business. And that's like a prerequisite to even be able to start thinking about, okay, how can we make this a product that sells on an enterprise scale? So I'm totally with you there. But I don't want to hold you up. So yeah, you're already on your way into takeaway 3.
Yeah, and I just so I would talk about that one as product market fit, and using really kind of learning from B2C around product market fit, because this is the product value era we're going into. And that also goes to the third one, which is related to kind of third stage, I think, or second stage of B2B SaaS scaling, which is from product market fit, you then have to move into go-to-market fit, right? And if a product market fit is proven by, customer net retention, or kind of just retention in general, that people are actually staying with your product, then you also need to find a way to scale it efficiently, right? So that's when you move into go-to-market and finding your go-to-market fit. And my learning has been extremely painful in this specific third point, because when I came from the consumer industries into B2B, I automatically, I looked at B2B companies and I started building a sales force and doing exactly what I should be doing, which was, recruiting a sales team in the US, going to meet enterprise clients, and all of a sudden realizing that market was actually not the market where what we should focus on. It was really looking at the data and looking at the value and the scalability and realizing the fact that my little business, soundtrack and music, was actually self-service enabled. And self-service enabled means that a buyer can actually buy this on their own without a salesperson holding them in the hand, all the way from initial touch point all the way to long-term usage without any humans involved. So I tried every channel, partner channel, enterprise sales, inside sales, and everything. But at the end of the day, I should have actually just realized right away, wait a minute, we've just scaled this music offering into the consumer markets, self-service, and the hundreds of millions previously. And you know what? It's the same consumer running his cafe or her restaurant that's using Spotify. So we should be able to scale this through a self-service motion as well. So we found product-led growth, and we kind of started reading up about this new religion and kind of found like, okay, this is actually thinking like a consumer go-to-market, but in B2B with the bonus of upsell and expansion sales and kind of, LTV expansion over time with every customer. So I think it was a long, painful journey of huge mistakes until we found our go-to-market fit and kind of found the theoretical framework to work by. And I think the learning is that okay, you probably have to fail to kind of take something out of your strategy. I don't know if I would have been as confident of saying no to enterprise sales and kind of field sales as I am now when I've done it and seen like how much worse it is in terms of value creation in my space, in my specific industry. I'm not saying it goes for everyone. So go-to-market fit is really, I would say, if you think you made it when you reached product market fit, then lo and behold, until you find go-to-market fit, right? So that's my third one. I'm not scaring everyone here, and that's not just for music, right? That's for you. That's for everyone, for all of us running companies. And then, so those are kind of the first ones, moving from B2C into B2B, learning that I can actually use my experiences from B2C in my B2B notes, and then kind of learning from mistakes and go to market and finding a way, and then also learning to trim your business from B2B established metrics, right? B2C metrics are different than B2B metrics. So that's also kind of goes to the fact that like you can't do everything like you did in your B2C career. You also have to kind of learn from all the B2B companies and kind of apply your business to that reality. And then if I may just maybe one more, I actually have two more, but I think one thing that I've really been able to achieve lately, and I don't know if it's like a learning or if it's luck at what it is, but it's when you find product market fit and you're able to get the go-to-market fit, you've obviously done something right in terms of strategy, tactical focus. Then I'm a small company. We're a small company. We're only 80 FTEs, and we're at almost $25 million in ARR. So we really try to scale. One thing that really I focused on lately is getting all the teams, every engineer in my team, and we're very engineer-centric, focused on the business and organizing it so that all engineering teams actually own customer-based KPIs as well. So unlocking the power of product development and engineering teams in your business rather than having them as just builders of some other teams, specs. So this is really the new one for me. And like the epiphany of when you get all engineering teams feeling that they're part of driving, actual revenue, it becomes an amazing feeling. And it's also satisfying for the engineering teams to feel that they're actually part of the business. So that's my fourth one, like getting every engineer focused on the business rather than just thinking that they're a coder.
I would like to ask a follow-up question on this one, because I think it's a very good point. I wrote an article a few years ago about outcome-oriented development, which touches a bit upon what you're talking about. Do you have an example that you can share on a metric that ties this together?
I have actually, and this goes to actually my last point, which is always trying to establish a really simple focus. And to 2023 for us, I mean, you're doing so many things the whole time trying to progress. But we've now, and you're trying to oversimplify without oversimplifying in a way that kind of becomes destructive, right? But now we really zoomed in on one sequence in our go-to-market, which is free trial to paying ratio. So the free trials, the short story is we're doing really well in terms of penetrating the market and bringing in free trials. And we're doing really well in when the customers are paying and they become customers, they're staying and they're expanding. So our net revenue retention is strong and our top of the funnel conversion is extremely strong. Where we haven't been doing an amazing job is the free trial to paying ratio due to many, many reasons. And actually during the free trial, there's also there's so many things that need to happen that come from product and so forth. And there's so many things that come from marketing. So now I focus the whole company, all engineering teams, all marketing teams on one metric next year. That's moving free to paying from 10% to 20%. So I think that's the really tangible example that's on our desk right now.
That's a great example. And I also think that, it's a nice example because it's one that you could actually copy. I mean, many companies could do exactly what you're doing there, and what you're saying around making the product team much more directly engaged with the metrics that drives business. I think it's an amazing example. I'll take that with me myself as well. I think there's, when I look at the whole flow of the company, I can identify you did that there are certain areas where we're doing fantastic, and then you have these parts of that flow where you can do better, and having a conversion metric then that everyone aligns around. I think it's a great example.
And you also have to kind of organize around it. It doesn't come. It's hard work. You have to institutionalize all teams meeting around this metric. You have to have the data in order. You have to understand the underlying drivers of that specific core metric, right? So it's not easy. It sounds easy. And then obviously people are doing other things. It's not like they're only doing that, but it's a priority metric. Like if you're going to choose between a task A and B, ask yourself which one contributes most to the improvement of our conversion free to pay. Then choose that one.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing these 5 learnings and also the whole backstory to Soundtrack. I think this is inspiring not only for people who wants to go into music tech. I think these are good learnings for any junior or senior entrepreneur in SaaS. So this was a great talk, and obviously we're both Swedish, and today we were speaking English, so we can cater to our audience here. But I am looking forward to seeing you, in the flesh, in a not too distant future as well, and then we can go back to Swedish.
Okay, Patrick, thank you for having me. Talk to you soon.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you did, you know what to do. Share it in your social media so more people can take part and learn. And one more thing, check out Favro Academy on favro.com for many more learnings. Thanks for tuning in.